Uh, we're dancing it either way, though. Welcome, everybody. This is the Smart and Public podcast, a podcast that discusses business, careers, and life through the eyes of PR communications experts. And today, a journalist, Kerry Flynn. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, man, we're so excited to have you on. I feel like this is going to be a dense conversation.
Dense in a good way.
I feel like that came out wrong, actually, now that I'm just...
I'm like, are we already starting at the dumb in public? Is that what we're getting off with?
Shit, that's not what I meant. Like, meaty is maybe
No,
what I
hear you.
mean.
Yes.
God damn it.
This is one of Boyson's unique skills, is she chooses a word that is not quite the right word, but it creates a lot of laughter. It's close.
I love it.
Oh my God. Well, anyway, we're happy to have you here, Kerry. And for anyone that might not know Kerry, Kerry Flynn is a reporter at Axios. So most of you would probably know her as the co-curator of Media Trends Executive, and she covers the media industry at large, but has a particular interest in advertising and the creator economy. She previously worked at CNN, Digiday, Mashable, you name it. We love her for it. Kerry, so glad to have you on the show.
I like you name it. It's true. I've worked at many a media company, but I think that's what makes me a good media reporter is I actually
100%.
have like a lot of knowledge from inside a lot of different newsrooms.
You got it. Like, I feel like understanding the newsroom is more important than ever, given that, you know, what you talk about every day.
100%. We're not all the same, for sure.
We can't all be Alex Conrad and be at Forbes for 12 years.
Well, you know, a fun fact is I was at Forbes for 3 months with Alex Conrad because that was my first internship out of college. And that's also when Forbes got bought. And essentially everyone around me was like, don't stay here. Like, please leave.
Oh, I love that.
The shakeup of the company of people who have been there for forever were like, we don't like this new direction. But I don't know, Alex clearly stuck around and it paid off for him. But meanwhile, I started my journey elsewhere.
Listen, I love a good hop, let me tell you. We also can empathize with being at a company for a long time. So listen, either way, whichever direction you go, Davisi and I have got you.
Right. Yeah, there's no straight path.
Yeah. All right. Let's just kind of start with the general media landscape. And really just like, are you guys okay? But like, you have covered the industry for over a decade. It's like, from your vantage point, like, what is the single biggest shift in how media operates today versus when you started? And like, what are comms people still not catching up to?
When I started, media was still largely driven by institutional power, like legacy publishers like Forbes, we were just talking about, and established newsrooms. And then at that time, essentially a decade ago, distribution was like primarily driven by Facebook and Google. I would say today the biggest shift is that the center of gravity has moved to individuals, right? It's journalists. It's less about, well, I love working at Axios and Axios is great. It's kind of a thing of like, it's more about me these days than necessarily the publication that one works for. Obviously, there's a reason I work at Axios. I love being a part of a team and I love the larger narrative, but it does really come down to the individual more than ever. And that individual who builds trust directly with audiences. And again, of course, there are still great publications that go beyond one individual. Like when I again started my career, my current employer Axios didn't even exist, right? And we're still going strong to get today. But we very much, I think, hire for and prioritize individual contributors more so than ever, and subject matter expertise and people who just come with authority. I guess I would say, to answer your second question of what comms pros are missing, perhaps that earned media isn't just about a headline, and it's not necessarily about where it's placed, like a story in Axios or I don't know, the New York Times, like they still matter. But I think what matters more so than ever before is it's amplified by the right people and that the right person covers it. So when I think of that amplification, I think of LinkedIn and I think of TikTok and I think of other newsletters. Like when I write a story these days, I immediately share it on my personal social media, and then I share the story link, but also those links to those posts with the relevant contacts. And it's not brand new. Like I'll never forget when I started my career back in, like, I think it was a job in 2015, that my editor suggested that I email Brian Stelter one of my stories to potentially include in the Reliable Sources newsletter, which is a funny coincidence since that's later where I ended up working. But I think it's just key that amplification is more important than ever before. We can't just assume that everyone will see and read your story because it's in the New York Times or because it's on Axios, but it's that larger network.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that there's a lot of power in, from a comms perspective too, like something that I've been doing with my clients around like fundraising announcements is creating like what we would call like an ecosystem influencer list. So like we're sitting down with the founders, sitting down with the C-suite and individually saying like, who are the investors that you know? Who are the developers that you are friends with? Like, who are the people that have influence in whatever space we're announcing in for this, and reaching out to them? Like, I'll write and package up like a sentence or two, and we'll share like a graphic, or we'll give them like the press release because you're in the cool kids or whatever, and saying like, hey, like we're about to announce this tomorrow. Would love your support and like helping us amplify. And it fucking works. Like, it sounds so basic, but it's a time suck to do it. But if you have the right list and like the right message and the people that you can like spread your fingers out through, the same way that you're thinking about it from like media and storytelling, I feel like that's another way to really do that.
I love that you're thinking about it. So clearly you don't need the advice that I just gave, but I think other people do. I think on both sides of the equation, like I see my peers just write these stories and great stories, and then I'm like, well, like, where is it? Right? I don't see, and not, obviously we're stretched thin on our time, and good reporting matters, but there's clearly so much value in amplification broader, that I think everyone should prioritize.
And I think people genuinely want content for their own stuff, right? So I think to your point, Boyson, about picking that group, part of the reason it's successful is often those people are looking for stuff to share with their networks to show that they're connected. So it's kind of this full circle thing. So I think identifying the right people that are kind of going to share your thoughts, but also want that amplification on their own channels.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like there's a reason that person is sharing it. You're not just sharing it out of nowhere. I feel like there was a time, maybe again, it was a while ago, where like engagement pods were such a thing on like Instagram and clearly LinkedIn as well. And like platforms have like cracked down on that. But like there's a difference between an engagement pod where you're just juicing it versus like actually what you just said, like sharing it with the people that matter.
Dude, I totally forgot about engagement pods. My God. How much do you track when people share your stories on social? Like, is that something that you guys look at in the newsroom, or just you personally?
I personally look at it a lot. It is really like a validator to me when my peers like cite it, or like experts in the space. So like when I write something, and obviously I expect that the people that I interview to share it, but it's really beyond that as well. It's the competitors and experts in the space as well. I think that is, again, traffic is one thing, but I'll think about when I like worked at CNN, an incredibly powerful company, and its homepage is still so strong, and you see the traffic, but I look at that and I'm like, cool, 1 million people read it. Who are those millions of people? Like, you really like have such little idea, versus when you go to like a place like LinkedIn, you actually see the person and you actually see it reaching the right audience. And I think that's such a great tell.
It's funny, like people hate on LinkedIn so much. I'm like, I'm one of them. I like feel like I go on LinkedIn and I'm sad when I leave. I don't know why. Like, it just gives me like I don't know. But like, even people on X that swear by X, they're like, I'm just getting so much traffic to my Substack from LinkedIn. Like, that's just where the magic happens, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I think I feel like I've said LinkedIn a lot, but you just said Substack. I think that's also a great validator. Being aggregated by someone else's newsletter is great. I go back to, again, 10 years ago when someone told me to pitch Reliable Sources. Like, there's more obviously newsletters like Reliable Sources, and I think getting that bump is incredible. I'll never forget when I was at Mashable that one of my stories was picked up by the Skim, as in it had the top slot in the Skim, and essentially I felt like I could quit my job and go home because the traffic that brought was amazing. Right, and it's not just all about traffic. It obviously clearly is speaking to an audience that cares.
And And this is kind of touching on your other world, which is creators and like what that's kind of shaping into be. You have said before, like they are kind of rewriting the ways that we're thinking about marketing. What would you say is fundamentally misunderstood about the way that we work with creators now and how they can help your business, whether that's marketing or comms?
I think some people still underestimate how strategic creators are. Like creators, the best creators today are the best operators. Like they understand audience data, they understand brand equity, they understand community behavior. Like some people still think of creators as just like basic distributors of messaging, right? But like, no, they're like storytellers. Like if a brand wants to stay relevant, I think and what I learned through a lot of my coverage and especially in a recent deep dive is that they need to collaborate with creators and think of them as strategic partners. Like I think the NFL has done an incredible job with that. And they think about it when it comes to their athletes, like being creators, but also these outside perspectives and also going to people who aren't necessarily the most obvious, like you think, but who understand perhaps they reach an audience that they care about. And again, trusting that creator to tell the story of the NFL. Like, for example, recently at the Super Bowl, the way they want to tell it. Not like, oh, here's our script of what you need to be saying, but these really, to use the overused word, but authentic like partnerships and collaboration side of it.
Yeah, so actually bringing them in at the strategy level to say, hey, here's the audience we're trying to reach, and then leveraging the creator's ability to think about storytelling, content, or versus just saying like, hey, we want you to promote this thing and here's the script.
Yeah, and letting them just go with it, right? And to like be so unique in their storytelling. One creator who I had the pleasure of meeting last summer at Cannes and have now like been in the same rhythm multiple times. Her name's Pearson. I went on an early preview of a Disney cruise and she was there and she's a YouTuber is her main format and she does like challenges. My understanding is like they didn't tell her what challenge to do. She ended up going to every single restaurant on the cruise ship and creating this really fun video that like toured you around it. It wasn't like, oh, here's everything to do. It was such a smart way to do it. And I know too, she was just at the Super Bowl. I don't know if she's posted a video about it yet, but I know it'll be something fun and unique that just, again, speaks to like who she is versus trying to force them to tell a specific story.
What's a Disney cruise you like?
That was what I wanted to ask.
Take a hard left into this.
Yeah, please share.
It was a really fun trip. But it was an important story. And I told my team it was an important story to cover because I pitched it as this is the big bet of who was at the time a CEO contender and who is now the CEO of Disney. So that was the framing of my whole story. Being pretty confident going into it of that was the case. But it was a really fun trip because it was like me and a bunch of like travel media and then a bunch of like creators. And it's interesting to see. And so now I feel like I'm going off a huge tangent.
No, I like it.
There's the remaking of a travel agent, right? Of like essentially travel agents having to become content creators was something that I'm sure there's coverage on it, but I was like personally fascinated. Clearly I'm there focused on like the business of Disney and their future, but I'm like, there's something to say that now you see travel agents like are doing all these things that to pitch their agency where they have to create so much content themselves these days because that's their discovery and that's how they're building that trust and relationship. It's just very different than back in the day.
It's interesting that kind of takes us into an interesting conversation of like what qualifies a creator as well, because I think like for me when a light turned on when you were talking about the travel agent creators because I watch a lot of real estate videos where like they, do tours of homes and walk you around the neighborhood or like 10 things I love about living in Solana Beach, like things like that. So, I just, I don't know, like there's something in that as well, where you can kind of create your own little micro influence bubble.
Totally. I think that was one takeaway I had when I was working on that deep dive recently about the creator economy. I went about it looking at different sectors and how they've transformed. And the sectors that I looked at were like Hollywood and sports. But when I spoke with someone who's actually the CEO of Darman Studios, Sean Atkins, when I was talking to him about, I was like, I want to talk to you about Hollywood being reshaped. And he was like, no, we got to focus on B2B creators. Like that is the most important story. And I was like, Sean, no, we need to talk about Hollywood. But he's right? And it speaks to what we're talking about. Like we talk so much about lifestyle and entertainment creators, but
Yeah.
there's a whole ecosystem of niche experts, like we're talking about travel, legal, manufacturing, finance, healthcare, that are building real media businesses. And in part, it's because they can cut out the middleman of marketing, right? Like we're so used to, law firms having billboards on the highway, and not to say that's still incredible form of advertising, but it's obviously an incredible form of advertising to like run your whole TikTok, like have a TikTok and be an authority there. I think there's so much debate for the last few years of like creator versus influencer. And I think that like influencer label perhaps like undersells like how transformative it can be for professional storytelling. Like
Yeah.
it's not just like influencer because they're just like selling their audience. It's like actually that expertise and authority that we're gonna see, I think, more of. Again, my like last line was like essentially that everyone is a creator, and it's true.
Totally. It's very like Gary V for like the B2B kind of creator as well. There's this woman named Megan Adar who does the tea and tech kind of rundown as well. We're trying to get her on the show. She's lovely, but
I'll listen to that.
that's another one that you should check out. I feel like she just did a collaboration with like GM, and she's quite cool. So there are a lot of those people coming up.
Yeah, that's what I
we're
hear. I
seeing.
spoke to Slow Ventures, who's like a venture capital firm that invests in creators, and Megan Lightcap over there was like, you can't go too niche. Like there's just so much value in that. I think we're of the world where we hear new newsletters launching, new podcasts launching, and it's like, aren't we peak? And like, truth be told, what I seem to see is like we are definitely not. And sure, it's becoming more fragmented and fractured, and we're not all reading the same thing anymore. But there's also a lot of value in that, and that like that true expertise we're seeing across platforms.
How are you seeing like dollars shift in strategy in terms of like going towards creators versus like traditional ad spend or media spend?
It's definitely growing. I wish I had the stats in front of me. I charted them a lot in that deep dive that I did. There's plenty out there you can read. But I think what we're seeing is there's obviously the growth from forever about like YouTube and Facebook and Snapchat building these massive ad platforms that are on the backs of like individual content creators, right? As going back to like we're all creators, like Facebook sells and sold ads next to our content, right? But I think what we're starting to see shift as well is like ad dollars going directly to individuals and not just platforms. Like one thing I've noticed is YouTube's growth as an ad platform is incredibly there. I think their ad like for the last year was bigger than Netflix, right? They're huge. What's undercounted in their ad dollars is the money going directly to Mr. Beast or the money going directly to creators. Like it doesn't actually track brand sponsorships because they don't take a cut of that, unlike they do when like an mid-roll or a pre-roll ad.
Yeah.
And it's one thing that my understanding is could change in the future. I was at an event that YouTube hosted last year where they talked about setting up a marketplace to help creators with that. And Samir of Colonist Samir was like, does that mean because you want a slice of that? Like, so there's a question there. And obviously anything that I think YouTube's attitude is like rising tides lift all boats type of thing. Like, it's like, we want you to make more money because that brings more attention here and helps us overall. But what I'm just, again, starting to see is that more as the creator autonomy matures and brands get it more, is we see less of those like, okay, yeah, let's put money on YouTube and let's do a one-off influencer post, but more like these long-term brand deals that are truly a lot of money, right? Especially when you think about like a flywheel approach where like, again, not to use like Mr. Beast again, but to use Mr. Beast, where like you hire Mr. Beast to, like Salesforce just did for a Super Bowl ad, but you're also hiring him as a part of a larger content play as well.
Yeah. I saw the funniest tweet the other day that was like, my kid just asked me what Salesforce is. I fucking hate the Super Bowl. Because it was like, he obviously saw the Mr. Beast ad because his kid's like watching that.
Like it's sometimes I feel like when I first moved to New York, I would wonder like why these companies were always advertising on the subway, like who are they selling to? And I heard from someone that it's sometimes a hiring play. Like you buy ads because it like is awareness of the company to try to get people to work there. And I feel like that was also a side of it. Like now maybe we're gonna have these little kids be like, wait, I don't want to just be a creator. I want to be a Salesforce employee. my head for sure for that.
Oh my
What
God.
world to live in when the kids are saying they want to work at Salesforce?
If
Oh,
Mr. Beast loves them, clearly it's a great place to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
listen, I am turning 42 this year. I fucking love Mr. Beast. I think like the Beast Games is so hilarious. Like I rarely watch a show without a phone in front of my hand or in front of my face. And I literally just watched a recent episode today and I was like screaming at the TV. I get so emotionally involved.
I confession have not watched Beast Game season 1 or 2, even though I've written about it a lot. I should watch it. I tend to watch a lot of scripted versus unscripted.
Mm.
But I do appreciate what he does. I was just explaining to someone the other day, they were like, I don't get why he's so big. But I remember my young like nephews telling me like, this was again probably a decade ago it was when Mr. Beast had reached like mainstream famous, but wasn't as big as he is now. And I think what they really connected with him is they saw that like that could be me, right? He was just like this kid
Totally.
where posting on YouTube. So I think that was one part of it. And then his success also comes down to there was a lot of like prank videos at that time that tend to be like punching down and like making fun of people rather than what I think he's tried to do is like he only like make fun of and challenge himself and then like uplift other people, which I think was a smart like spin on what was already a popular genre.
Totally. I think he does a really good job at like playing at and like opening a door to people just viewing the human psyche. Like that's, I think, why I like Beast Games so much is because it's all just manipulation games, like that people trying to outdo other people.
Well, that's why Survivor is one of the longest like running reality shows. For
Seriously,
sure.
didn't they just have 50 seasons or some shit like that?
Yeah, because it's going on for 25 years. They have like 2 seasons a year. Yeah, I watched it back when I was like a kid. It's wild to think that it's still ongoing, but I think it speaks to exactly what you just said.
Has it been the same host the whole time?
It has. It'll be Botox works wonders. But it'll be wild if he ever retires.
He'll go down with the ship, surely.
Yeah. Or maybe Beast could take over. I don't see it's possible.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah. Survivor, Mr. Beast. Yeah.
Do you watch either of those, Davisi?
Survivor, we have our own version down here. So there's like Survivor Australia. It did not, I think, go as well as Survivor in the US has gone, but it exists. So I've watched that. And Mr. Beast, I've watched a little bit of. Like, not, I'm aware, but not necessarily an avid fan. And I think my kids are too young at this point.
Yeah.
My son watches a YouTube show called Cam and Ben, where they do, I don't know if that's what it's actually called, but that's their names. They're two like teenage boys or like young 20s, like maybe, and they just do like they build secret rooms in their house. They do all this like kind of, and he loves it. And it's kind of like this whole thing, right? Is like that's what he wants to watch. And similarly, they're not doing rude things. They're not hurting anyone. It's kind of like fun and silly. But like what's come out of it is he calls me dude and bro all the time because that's what they call each other. That's a new development, but that's a side. But it's just interesting. I think he's like 6, right? And YouTube is the place he watches stuff. As much as I try and limit that and I'm trying to be like conscious of it, that is their first choice about viewing, which is really interesting.
I'll have to watch more of their videos, but what you just described makes me think of the like animated show Phineas and Ferb. That was all about just 2 kids at home doing fun things, and obviously it was scripted and animated. But I'm like, did they just follow that like pattern?
Yeah. I join periodically to check what they're actually doing when he's watching it, and it's like, they build like secret gaming rooms in their house, and they build things under the trampoline and like all sorts of silly stuff like that. It's wild, but anyway.
It just reminds me of like playing Fort. I love it.
Yeah.
So back to our topic, Kerry. It's happened again. So we're thinking about like creators, we're thinking about where the money is flowing. If you were talking to a CMO right now, like what would you tell them? It sounds like YouTube is what you would tell them to prioritize, but like what would you tell them to stop wasting their money on? Like what's not working too?
I mean, YouTube is for sure still the king of the creator economy, and it's a reason perhaps that they've been at it for over 20 years now. So obviously that's where a lot of they just have the infrastructure, right? And there's a reason that creators go there first. But I also just think to kind of repeat what I said earlier, it's also about the individuals, right? So I was at YouTube held its first like creator premieres, which was an event for ad buyers. It's not new for YouTube to pitch to like agencies. They have a long-term event called Brandcast. But this was more of a niche event that was specifically showcasing creator content and shows in a format that the kind of TV networks have done for a while, where they gave exclusive like pre-release to content that was coming out. But I think what I'm going to stress, what was so core to that is giving a spotlight to individual creators. So one of them was Cleo Abram, who is behind the show Huge If True. And I think that's the thing where you just taught me about a creator that I don't follow, Cam and Ben. I think a lot of people don't really know. They know the big names like Mr. Beast, but they don't necessarily know these other like, and I don't want to say up and coming because Cleo has a ton of subscribers. She's clearly amazing, but I think it's educating on who those people are and also helping brands connect with them and understand their distinct audiences and storytelling formats. So I think what I would stress that they need to think about is the pitch needs to involve, instead of asking like, how do I get my client featured in a video, and how do I not just like spend dollars aimlessly onto YouTube, but think about fitting into a creator's universe. Like that's something that Cleo stressed in her pitch is like, I produce this kind of content. I would love to have partners and tell their stories. Like one of her examples was working with F1. I know she just posted something about Nike has like a new shoe that's all about their latest innovation, right? So that's one thing that I'm seeing more and more of the platforms and the creators themselves adapt to, and wanting more brands and agencies to think of a conversation that way.
I think from like a storytelling perspective too, there are some, if you do it really well, there are some brands that I have discovered through the shows that they put out like on YouTube. So I'll give you an example. There's a show called Dirt that I'm obsessed with on YouTube. I would say it's probably like my favorite TV show out of all the shows that I watch now, but it's done by a ex-snowboarder named Josh Rosen. It's like sponsored by Hookberry. I'm Josh Rosen. I was an ex-snowboarder. And then what they do is they go around to all these different places. It's this beautifully produced show of like food outside, like in nature, and then the locals and the communities and like what they eat. And it's actually a food show. And it's like amazing. And so like that's how I discovered Huckberry, which is actually a really cool brand. And now like I buy Scotty stuff from there.
I think one of the most like powerful flywheels we're seeing is creators producing, content, right? Or sorry, not creators. Obviously, they produce content. I mean, producing products. Like I'm a longtime Call Her Daddy listener, and I think it's not surprising that therefore I am also a big consumer of Unwell Hydration because like I clearly consume her content, and now that's a part of like her story. And it's one of those things too. I think it's smart when, with what you said of it doesn't seem weird that he's creating that product because and marketing that product because it fits into the story, and same thing for what I just mentioned.
Yeah, and none of it is about clothes. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's almost like a personal, it gives that brand a soul, I feel like, that show.
What should they not spend money on? Because I think that was the other part of your question.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Should they stop spending money?
Where should they stop spending money? I had to reverse the question. They should spend more money on news media and journalism. No, I think that's obviously a priority for me. I think just going back to like just blindly throwing money into platforms, like especially I think you just mentioned AI. I think it's easier than ever for agencies and like ad buyers to just sit back and press a couple buttons and like have the money go to places where they think it's best. But I think I just continue to stress the value in long-term partnerships and strategic relationships rather than just, letting the machine
dollars for dollars' sake. Yeah.
Can I take us into AI town now? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
so just like hinted a little bit that don't let AI do all the work for you.
Yeah.
Pull in.
Okay, so let's talk about the AI Accountability for Publishers Act. So as someone who covers both kind of media economics and AI, like how do you see AI scraping content tensions playing out? Like should communications pros like be worried about the value of the content they're creating if AI can just summarize it anyway? Like what does that look like to you?
Yeah, that act you just mentioned is I was at IAB, which is a big advertising trade group, their annual leadership meeting, and they proposed this legislation because their CEO, he always does like a one big thing, state of the industry talk, and last year it was Save the Open Web, which was all essentially about traffic going to AI portals. This one was a little bit stricter about the fact that AI companies have built products on the backs of publishers and creators without clear consent and compensation, and that has forced this bigger reckoning with IAB being like, we need legislation to protect us. But also we've seen in the past few years, publishers suing AI companies or just not striking deals and just speaking out about the fact that they deserve compensation. I think what's important to watch, what my colleagues and I have been watching for a while now, but will continue to watch in the coming years, is how it plays out in the courts. So we saw last fall that Anthropic agreed to pay. They had the largest largest copyright settlement in US history. That was, I think it was 1.5 billion, if I don't have right, that went to like a group of authors. So that was obviously a huge settlement. But I think what was important in that case is that a judge ruled that Anthropic's approach of they bought a bunch of physical books and made digital copies to then train their large language model. The judge rules that that was fair use. And that is the big question of like, when I say and when IAB says it's built their products on the backs of publishers and that's not fair, there's the question of what will play out in court is whether or not it is fair. And so that Anthropic and therefore wasn't, was able to continue to do that. They pirated, I guess, some books, so they had to delete that. But the big thing that came out of that case was that being considered fair use. So I think that's an important thing to watch. The other thing when it comes to like how marketers and PR professionals to think about it, the catchphrase that I keep hearing again and again at events is GEO is the new SEO. Admittedly, I did not know what people were talking about for a little bit. And then I realized that G means generative. So essentially it's the fact that like we should be thinking about content, not optimizing content for Google search, or not, back at what we talked about at the beginning, not just thinking about traffic comes from Google search and Facebook, but instead optimizing for generative AI search. And I think what's so interesting and tricky about that is we don't actually understand how they work. They're kind of these big boxes that we obviously know earlier that have scraped from a lot of internet sites, but what sources these engines prioritize and will continue to prioritize, we don't really know. So that's what I think is so interesting. And my advice now I'm thinking about as a content creator, and I think others could take value is be rather ubiquitous, I guess, and like have authority across outlets and platforms, right? Like, so I obviously write for a website and that's great, but like going back to like sharing my content elsewhere and having other people say my name, I think is incredibly important. And last thing I'll say is someone I met with at CES said one thing they're thinking about, this is a big brand marketer, one thing they're thinking about is not only how they speak about themselves, but how competitors think about them. I feel like we're seeing a lot of like brand fights right now in advertising again. And part of me thinks about it, is it because like AI engines can pick that up and like value, like they don't have human judgment of versus if Pepsi says Coke is bad, then does the AI think Coke is bad? Like, like we don't know right now about how to be interpreted.
Well,
Yeah, that's
and then there's like the other side of thinking about the backlash of creating content like with AI, thinking about like Amazon pulling AI generated recaps for Fallout for factual errors, like McDonald's removing AI generated ads after backlash. Like, what's the lesson for brands and comms teams who are eager to use AI in their content but keep watching other companies get burned when they try?
I think the Fallout one was most egregious to me because it was literally they just had like a bad fact checking error. They like, and that's what I think is so key is that like, I guess like the AI efficient, like what we hear about with AI is it provides so much efficiency, but like that's not like a strategy. Like AI can help like brainstorm and clearly can help create, but it shouldn't replace that judgment that I just talked about. And like I've heard other people say that we can treat like AI like an intern. And I think I agree with that sentiment. Like AI is clearly like hardworking. Like some of these like also like engines are really like people pleasers, right? They are helpful, but they still like need oversight, right? So I think the most successful brands are ones that like build those internal guardrails. Like, yes, you can like use AI for scale and creation, but you always need to add that second layer of like accountability.
Yeah.
That's where again, like I look at that Fallout trailer and I'm like, how did someone with expertise of Fallout not look at that and catch that? But obviously errors happen all the time, but it's wild. And I think so that's one thing. And we're starting to see, so that's more just like letting AI free for all. When it comes to like AI with creation, there's obviously content creation. There's obviously a lot happening behind the scenes that we don't know, right? Like I think when it comes down to it, some publishers are starting to be public about letting their the fact they're letting their employees use AI to write. I don't know if you saw this recently, but Cleveland.com like went out very publicly saying they encourage their employees to their reporters to use AI for writing and essentially want to take that out of the job description.
Yeah,
Where
interesting.
there are other publishers who are like, no, you cannot use AI for writing. We will punish you if that's the case. So I think that's one thing that I'm watching is the kind of the eagerness to use AI and the resistance as well.
What's your ick threshold? Sorry, go ahead,
Yeah,
Demacy.
how do journalists feel about it? Like, how do you feel about it? How do you think your colleagues feel about it? Like, where does the like reporter community sit on it, do you think?
I think there's a lot of different opinions on it. Just like there's a lot of opinions, like I said, like people should be posted on LinkedIn, and some people are like, no, LinkedIn not for me. But when it comes to like AI writing, I think there's some people are really obviously proud of their own writing, and I've noticed like myself is just mentioned how AI is an intern. When I've used like AI and be like, asked it to like write things for me, they're not good. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying they can't get better. And also, maybe I just have a high bar for myself. Also, I just feel like it's not saving me time. So I personally don't get value in it, but I see the value of it being a assistant, right? And a brainstormer and a helper to like make things better and to be an editor. So I've used it, for example, of like when I'm writing something and I'm like, ooh, I need this to be 10 words shorter because at Axios we really care about word count, right?
Yeah.
It is pretty good at highlighting like words. And that's not though like that brand new and innovative. But I think completely taking out the writing would be pretty wild. But I also think it depends on the story. Like there's some recaps that we're seeing, like if you're just doing a quick update item, that could be easily done. But if you're doing something where it requires back to human judgment, then I don't know why we're outsourcing that to AI engines. And I think there's also the fear of everything sounding the same. Like I can very much tell when something is written by like AI. And I know this is something you've talked about in other episodes, but I think it's like when it's like, it's not this, it's this.
Yes.
I'm like, just say it's this. You don't even need to say what it's not. That's actually no value. Like, it's shorter sentences. And so I think that's kind of lost some of the like I guess value of words that I think is interesting to see.
It is interesting. The more people use it, the more it's quite obvious the tells, like the different, and there's a bunch of them. That's one of them. But like, it's funny now. I feel like I can see there's kind of, a handful that you're like, oh, yep, there it is. That's definitely gone through something. It's interesting. There's a publisher here in Australia that is using it to produce, and it's like it clearly states that that's what it is, but it is taking all of the media releases, it gets it about the industry. It's kind of a publication that covers the creative and media industry, and it produces a newsletter off the back of that done by AI that is just trying to capture the stuff that comes through that is not where they want to spend their time investigating and doing bigger stories. Time will tell if that, but it's kind of their way of going, we're a small team. We're not going to cover all these individual little media moves and all that sort of stuff. We're going to kind of try and package that up. Someone still edits it, but I think it puts it all together based on the press releases that come in to them. So
yeah, I think that's an incredibly powerful use case, and one that we're definitely thinking about at Axios is again how to save time, how to not do that busy right? That eats up a lot of time. I mean, one obvious example I think about, which is less generative AI, but still is AI powered, is I use Otter.ai for transcripts. And the amount of time that has saved me since when I started my career, I had to record everything and essentially type everything out myself and like fact check it a zillion times. Like that is the biggest time saver, right? Yeah. And now they're starting to insert more like generative aspects into Otter where they're like, ooh, we think this is the best quote. And that's where like, Otter only knows so much. I can look at it and get a lot of value from it. But I love that use case you shared. I think that big data stories that the human brain can't even begin to comprehend and do, that's great.
Yep. So kind of in that same vein then, like we know that Yahoo News launched an AI generated daily news digest. Time Magazine is adapting for AI agents. Media companies are clearly trying to meet audiences where AI is kind of taking them. Like, what does this mean for PR people? What does this mean for journalists who have built their entire careers really on writing and earned media? It's like reading everything is being summarized by AI. Like, what does that mean in how we're thinking about writing moving forward?
I think if like you just said, if AI agents are reading and summarizing your news, you want your news or your brand, if you're talking about a marketer, to like be a reliable source that shows up, right? And shows up correctly. And so I think that's where what we talked about earlier, we're still trying to understand exactly what that looks like. But I think it being very clear in your messaging, I think it means probably being pretty data driven, right? Like having numbers that can speak to your story and also just being quotable, right? Being constantly cited. I think I used the word ubiquitous earlier is something that's incredibly important. And I think for journalists like myself, it pushes us to focus on a trust and originality and overall quality. Like, so there's that, because again, we know the inevitable of AI search will pick our stories up, well, we hope that so, and then people will be consuming us from AI search. We can't necessarily always rely on, like we talked about, for people to just go to us directly. So there's that part, but it's also trying to make ourselves as a destination on your owned and operated property or through distribution channels where you can build audience and monetize. So that's one thing at Axios, we have a partnership with OpenAI. So obviously that's helping us get surface there, but also we still invest a lot in our own website and our own newsletters and on our own audience. So it's, I think what we're starting to see, you mentioned Time as well. I think they do a great job at that as well, of like having partnerships, but also making their own real estate really valuable. And part of making their own real estate valuable is introducing an AI agent to their own site. So like, instead of going to like ChatGPT, that you can go to Time and ask Time a question and it's only pulling from the archives of Time. So it's saying that its, resource is obviously really reliable and hopefully won't hallucinate because you're only pulling it off of verified facts and information.
Interesting. What about the love of the long form? Like I remember we had Tony Stubblebine from Medium on with us, and he was talking about just long form, like still having meaning. Like, do you think it's a lost art? Do you think that it'll continue on?
I definitely think it'll continue on. I think it just raised the bar of like quality, right? It's like and I feel this personally as someone, when I started in my career, I didn't think that much about word count as much because I grew up in the age of like newspapers where you have a specific word count, right? Because there's only so much on the print page. But then we had the internet, and actually there is no word count, and also actually websites are incentivized to write longer because there's more ads that get inserted in between. So it's kind of like it became a whole free-for-all when it comes to like quantity, and I think perhaps that pulled back on quality. So I think there's a part of both, but I think it's what the question is, what people want. Like we're starting to see changes. I wrote recently about media criticism changing inside newsrooms. We're seeing less like 5,000 word theater reviews, right? Because there's less people wanting to read about one specific play, and we're seeing more video first content, right? That's no surprise, because when I'm on the subway, what do I see people doing? I see people watching TikToks and Instagram Reels. I don't see people reading these articles. Yet at the same time, there is still a lot of, subscribers to print publications. There's success at great magazines. Like, The Atlantic has had a lot of success recently. And I am one who's starting to read, print books again. So there's still value in it, but I just stress the quality.
I've always been a big print book fan because I like the smell of the book glue.
Yeah.
I think print books have had a rise because also, yes, the smells, but also it forces you to be focused, right? Like versus if I'm listening, I'm a big like Audible person too. If I'm listening on my phone, if I'm listening, I can clearly do other things on my phone.
Something else. Yeah.
Yeah. I was telling Davisi in an earlier episode that I braved the entire series of the Court of Roses and Thorns on audiobooks.
Okay, well, I think that is a great choice because did you do the graphic audio?
Yeah.
So it's actually awesome. It's like the whole thing movie for your ears is like so real, where it's amazing to have different actors like do the voices, and also then you learn how things are actually pronounced.
Yeah, that's true. I actually would not have nailed any of those names if it were not for the audiobook.
So yeah, I did that. Not to go on a total tangent, but I did that. I listened to them, but with Heated Rivalry, which I just started, I heard that the audiobook authors or audiobook voices are not that good, and so therefore I am reading it. So
interesting. Yeah, so what I listened to, because I listened to it on Spotify, and so like on the premium subscription, and so halfway, like it was book 1 and 2 narrated by one person, and then the other 3 books were narrated by someone else, and they didn't warn me, and so when I went into the new the third book, I was like it shocked me. I was like, this is the woman. This this isn't Farah. Who is this anyway? So I hate.
Talk about that all day, though. I think it's speaking of a sign of the times. There was a newsworthy thing that came out today that Amazon announced that for Kindle that you can go between both, which I think is incredibly
Huh.
powerful.
I heard this. Yes.
That's we're just always on the go and consuming content, and sometimes it's easier to listen, and sometimes you want to read. So
And apparently it picks up where you're up to. So if you read on your Kindle at night and then you're on the train the next day and you want to listen, it'll pick up from where you were up to in the Audible. Like
Clever.
that's
I think
great.
it's so smart. I think it's such a great use case, but it speaks to like talk about my beat, how like media and content consumption is clearly at an all-time high when we're serving people in that way. And it's amazing. But wow, we're never not consuming.
We're not. We're really not. It's gonna rot my brain. I'm convinced. I'm like, I need to just like go on a hike. So in that same kind of vein, like with everyone's consuming more and more media, we have media agencies that are also shifting and changing. You talked about Alex Cooper starting up her own agency. We're seeing the consolidation of agencies. Like the model seems to either not be working anymore or needing to completely, or like people are recognizing that and pivoting. Like, what's your take on what's happening now in the agency world?
Yeah, consolidation is the key word there. There's been a lot of that when it comes to just big mergers, right? So we had IPG and Omnicom like last year, and then within the agencies like WPP also just consolidate the different brands within them. I think that reflects that clients, aka the brands, just want speed and specialization and not all this bureaucracy, right? So in the traditional model of an agency, it was like a big retainer and it was more like a one size fits all approach. And I think that's very much breaking down. And instead, like agencies, they're seen more as a network of experts. It's more like nimble teams that can operate on moments rather than these big annual contracts. And what you just mentioned, like we're seeing creator-led agencies like Alex Cooper, these people who can, run a boutique shop and really activate on smart strategic campaigns and not be a part of this wider system. There is still value, like, and very much, we already talked about AI where, big agencies like WP, and a reason that IPG and Omnicom said they merge is because they want to invest in smarter software, right? It's interesting to see what that looks like on all sides of the equation, right? It's creation, it's distribution, but there's also at the same time this conversation happening right now where it's never been cheaper to produce your own software because of vibe coding. So just a lot of pressure on agencies. But I think what will continue to be true is that we always need strategists, right? Like we need those people. And we've seen that. I used to work at Digiday, which is an ad trade, and at the time there was a lot of movement of in-housing, right? So certain brands like sign off their agencies and bring all their certain aspects of their marketing in-house. And there's been shifts of that going back out, right? Because you're not the expert at everything. And also it's expensive to hire your own marketers as well, and size of the equation versus to outsource is the reason we have outsourcing. So yeah, just to put bottom line, consolidation, we're going to see more of that and just a lot of continued shift on that business model front.
When I think of advertising agencies, I always think of like What Women Want, that Mel Gibson movie with what's her butt in it? Helen Hunt. It makes me think of like those are for those types of agencies, or the huge agencies of the world that are kind of like starting to consolidate or break down, are for like the Nikes or for like the big companies. Like, do you think maybe some of this media agency breakdown is happening because startups are the future of business, maybe like nimble, lean, like moving quickly, doesn't need all the formalities, like that sort of thing? There's a reason, like, to stay big, you still need like big thought and big like leadership. I think Nike was actually, I'm glad you brought it up because they were a good example of like when there was a lot of like backlash on the agency model because they were and advertising, because they were criticized for going too direct to consumer and too programmatic rather than
big picture creative strategy at the time, and we've seen them pull back on it. And so it's on two sides. That's again the creative storytelling and the retail distribution. They have now like gone back to working with external partners, and same thing on the creative side. We see them doing these big brand campaigns. Like last year, they had a Super Bowl ad for the first time in a while, and I think again they've been smarter on their partnership. So I don't see the complete like fall of agencies. There's still very much value in them. And there was actually a great story in the Wall Street Journal recently about the fact while there's been a lot of layoffs in New York agencies and the big players, there's a lot of success in the Midwestern agencies because there's still people who, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about expertise. There's people who like want to speak to middle America and don't actually know how. So that's one thing. And also some of these agencies have what I think in the story calls like Midwestern sensibility, right? So they're perhaps like are a little more cost conscious than the traditional agency known in New York would be. So it's interesting. I think perhaps it's never been better to be a boutique agency in a different market versus these bigger players that have had to essentially right size and completely change their business model.
Yeah.
Speaking of boutique things, let's talk a little bit about media trends executives. So you launched this kind of premium membership product for media leaders, and in a way you're building a media business inside of a media company. So what have you learned about media professionals that are actually hungry for that they can't get from like a regular news cycle?
I think what I've learned is that media professionals want clarity. They want information, but they also like new information, right? It's like there's a reason like, scoops and exclusives are so incredibly powerful in the news business, but there's also a need and desire for strong analysis. That's so one thing that we really designed Media Trends Executive to do is to provide clarity, but also deliver data backed context and kind of be a guide to what's happened and what's next. And that's not brand new to Axios. Like that's one thing that they've really like always been strong of, like trying to like be this light amid all the noise. But it's one thing that we've really focused on when it comes to Media Trends Executive for those media professionals. And so I think when it comes to subscriptions and new products, there's always the fear in doing too much. Like when I first joined Axios, I was a part of Pro Deals where we introduced a lot of new newsletters. And one of the feedback that we got was like, this is too much content. Like it's great content, but you're actually doing too much. So we really, my partner Sarah and I really think about providing smart context and value rather than creating too much. And so that part of the product is every month Sarah and I dig deep on a certain topic in the media industry. So recently that was creators. Right now it's about labor. So I'm having a lot of conversations with professionals, and this is the type of things we're covering this day to day, but we take a step back and go deep. We try to be really value add to what people need to know. Again, key is not only what's happened, but what to expect next.
Yeah, cool. Interested to see that labor one when that comes out.
It's been interesting. Well, it's been fun to write because we're amid a lot of negotiations in Hollywood right now. So it was I reached out to some people like, we actually can't talk because we have a media blackout, and I'm like, that's fun. So like, there's a lot of change there. And when it comes to my background, when I started, there was very few media unions, and then that actually became, when I became a media reporter, more a part of my beat because we saw a rapid rise of unionization in the industry. So it's interesting to see. And one thing we'll explore is how those have evolved.
That actually kind of ties into this next question of like, we've got the unions happening, things that are rising up that maybe people don't know about, but you're privy to just because of your beat, what you focus on every day. Like, what's a story or a trend in media right now that you think is massively underreported? Like something our audience of comms leaders or founders should be paying attention to, but maybe just don't know. It's not on the radar yet.
I think I don't want to completely repeat myself, but I'll just reiterate the rise of B2B creators. I think that's one thing that has been stressed to me by experts in the space again and again. And it's something that I think we covered and talked a little bit about early pandemic, right? When like everyone started to post on TikTok, right? Like, and we saw like the health professionals become TikTok stars, right? But I think what I just stress it again, because we shouldn't ignore that and look to the fact that like these people are not just doing that to do it. They're also building real media businesses and making money that way. And I think that's incredibly valuable. I guess the other thing that I will say is I use the phrase, and I think I use the phrase all the time, of the fragmented media landscape. And that speaks to the cause of that is what I just said. But I think one trend that I'm still trying to understand, and everyone is okay, if it's so fragmented though, where are people still spending their time, and who is spending their time where? Like, one thing I did, I won't spoil exactly what the topic is, but I'm doing a data driven story for that deep dive on labor, and it's about a bunch of different companies, and we're like, how do we decide which kind of companies that we should base on? We don't want to cherry pick. And it's like, okay, let's look at the 100 most popular websites and traffic for this year. It's interesting to see who shows up there. But then I take a step back and I'm like, okay, but that's not everything. That's not the only thing that matters anymore. How much traffic comes to your website. Yeah. It's like, how many like Instagram followers do you have? How many TikTok followers do you have? Do you have a fast channel, CTV, where people are consuming you? Do you have an in-person event strategy where you're creating these like relationships again? Totally. So I think that's one thing that I personally struggle with. Like, I guess, so that's like perhaps underappreciated and reported, is understanding like which companies and people one should be paying attention to in this massive landscape that is media and content.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one that comms people are struggling with as well. Is like, where should we be placing stories if it's so fragmented? Where are our audience? Where are the people that are likely to want to buy or engage with our brand? And it's like, it's hard to understand that at the moment. I think they're in a lot of places, and that's the reality. So it's thinking about your strategy across all of those different places.
Exactly. And it's like never been harder yet easier to measure that. Like, one industry that I'm obsessed with is measurement, right? And so I did a deep dive on the measurement industry, and there's so many players in that space. But you also take a step back and be like, what are we actually tracking here?
What are we doing again?
Yeah. There's so much talk. I know, like, for instance, actually right now that I think of like where attention matters is there was all the talk of Colbert putting one of those interviews out on YouTube versus his show, and people being like, well, YouTube is where the audience is. And like, that's true, but also like, you can't, it's apples to oranges to compare like Nielsen data versus YouTube data. And so that's one thing that is so fascinating as well.
It all comes back to audience, because like, if that happened, my mom loves Colbert, but like couldn't pay her to go on YouTube to watch an episode. You know, she didn't know how to turn it on.
Yeah. So who are you really reaching? But that's what I think we're starting to change, not to go back to YouTube's strength. But when I spoke to Tara Palmieri, who went independent recently and now has her own YouTube show, she said that what was really the push for her to do that was she came home one day and her dad was watching YouTube. And her dad was someone who used to watch like TV. And if we start to see more and more people do that, clearly the audience is shifting. But yeah, that's the big narrative is my question is like, there's never been more for me to cover and understand. And it's a great challenge, and clearly we're all in it together.
If you had to make one prediction about the media landscape that would make most communications people uncomfortable, what would that be?
I think it's unfortunately what we just talked about. Like,
this whole episode.
Like that this whole episode. No, I think what we just talked about, that like perhaps like their pitch list is like wrong and outdated. Like, because I think I said at the top, like, it's not just about pitching to like Axios or the New York Times anymore. It's really about the person, and it's understanding that the influence, what we just talked about, is fragmented, and perhaps like those creators and niche experts can drive more impact than a traditional headline, or like, why not both, right? There's a power to having a story and a wider strategy. And I think like, I don't know if it's necessarily uncomfortable, because I hope most people realize that, but I think at the same time, it's so easy to stick into habit. And if my inbox says anything, it's that a lot of PR professionals, agencies are used to the habit of the old fashioned press release and spray and play and things like that. Well, there's just like we talked about creator relationships when marketing, there's obviously so much value on very strategic pitch lists.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, geez.
Just rip it all up and start over. That's
fine. Work after this one, I feel like, but that's okay. They should do their homework.
Kerry, I feel like you've given us so much to mull over in terms of just thinking about what is changing in media. Obviously thinking a lot about creators and what we can be doing more in YouTube and what micro influencer partnerships look like, all that good stuff. We've learned a lot there, but like, are you dumb in private? How are you dumb in private? Tell us.
So innocent. Are you dumb? Yes. My like dumb and private for you would probably be like I actually have too many moments to name. I think I surprise my husband nearly every day with my behavior of like things that I don't know or understand. Like he is constantly tells me he's like, "Didn't you go to Harvard?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, but I got in there because I'm hardworking and I'm studious and I'm charming, not because I know every fact in the history books or yesterday how to run our dishwasher. Like he literally asked me to run the dishwasher yesterday, and I was like, I don't remember how. So it's honestly it's pressing two buttons. So that was me probably being lazy. But yeah, there's a lot of like I'm really good at like rote memorization, but there's a lot of things that like once I studied for the exam, I just took it out of my head. So I just like
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know basic facts sometimes. So
Yeah.
unless it's about the media industry, I know a lot about that.
Well, obviously. That's such a thing with school where it was like you cram for an exam, you take the test, and then if it was one of the things that was like just your general education, it just went out the other side and you.
Yeah, like I like not to brag, but to brag, like I got a perfect score on my AP US history exam. I got a perfect score on my math SATs. I got like all these like great grades, but like that's just I think because I'm very studious and a hard worker, not because I like actually remember anything.
You're disgusting. I think the first time I took the SATs, I got like an 1100. So I had to take them again.
You are, and that's okay. And clearly, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true.
If any students are listeing, it does matter.
Go to school, learn math, everybody. It'll always count.
Kids are great.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
that's me. I'm happy to share. You can ask my husband for more specific examples.
No,
Thank
we often joke we should just get the husbands on because they'll be able to tell us exactly how.
Uh-huh.
I feel like we have a similar home dynamic.
Yeah. That's so funny. Well, Kerry, thank you. Thank you so much again for joining us. It's always just such a pleasure to catch up and hear everything that's going on in your world, but also just, you've got such a pulse on the industry and we just feel so lucky to have you take your time and spend it with us today. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. This was so fun. I really loved it. And I'm excited to keep listening, like have good creators on that I can keep following. I mean, we're all creators now, which I think was the bottom line of this podcast. But
Yeah, that's right.
those creators you mentioned, it sounds awesome.
You hear that, Meghana? We're coming for you. I'm going to email you again tomorrow. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Kerry, again. And if anyone has a recommendation or a topic or a guest, please reach out to us at helloinsmartandpublicpod.com. I promise on our email box is absolutely insane right now. I promise we will write back to you. Don't be mad. We're here. But thank you so much, Kerry, again. And we'll chat to you guys next week. Okay.
Thanks, Bye.
Bye.